Look, Kremlinology didn't die, although maybe Kremlin is not the same as it was either under Catherine or Peter the Great or whoever was before them, or actually Kremlin wasn't they moved out of Moscow to St. Petersburg, so okay, but Kremlinology as a subject didn't die. Joseph Stalin, Nikita Khrushchev, all there, it's all there. We're still reading tea leaves. I don't know. I cannot tell you, and I think those who can probably would be lying, because Putin is a very, very experienced operative, and he knows that he needs to keep his cards very close to his chest. So I would imagine, I believe that it's all a big political game. And also, it is interesting that you call him a spoiler, because if you ask him or his people, they would tell you that they are just protecting Russian national interests. Because whatever they do, it's always about the Russian national interest, about the Russian statehood. Very similar in a similar vein as always the Kremlin function. It was the sort of father figure or father construction of a great Russian state. And also, I am somewhat not sure about the, not necessarily sincerity of the Medvedev policy, but how independent he is in setting up this Western type policy, because he may mean well. And actually, I'm sure that eventually these things will work out, but it is also very big in kind of a Kremlinological way of doing things, and I would say even Byzantine, since you mentioned the article in Foreign Policy, it's on the Byzantine Russian behavior. The Byzantine way of doing things, you really have to make it appear yourself hard to get. And I think Putin has been very, very good at that. And that balance, Putin-Medvedev, makes it a much more interesting story for the world to observe than just one saying no, or just one saying no, or another one just saying yes. So it keeps Russia in a conversation, it keeps Russia in the loop, it keeps Russia interest to a certain extent going. So I would read it as a somewhat political charade that eventually may or may not turn into something that is tangible and positive, or tangible and not positive for the West and policy.
Interesting. Model can last.
That's actually a great question. But Russia is a mythology, you know, so, and that's why I believe Putin is rather durable, because he is based on a lot of myth. I mean, if you look at Russian history, it's a mythological country. I mean, you know, you yet again mentioned the article in Foreign Policy on the double-headed eagle. You know, you have a coat of arms with a bird that doesn't exist. So your whole concept is mythological formula. You know, the Byzantine influence of Russian politics, and in fact, you know, until very recently, there was a very Byzantine project to bring Russia back to the global stage, but as a Byzantine, as a Byzantine successor again, which is a mythology. I mean, that empire, Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, as it was also called, collapsed in, what was that, 1473, 1452, something like that. And, you know, 600 years later, we're still taking it seriously. It's a very mythological way of looking at things. I mean, looking at history as your contemporary advisor or contemporary textbook is a very interesting way of doing things. So I actually think in this, Putin could be very durable, because we are big. I mean, we Russians are very big on a story. We love a story. You know, if you look, I mean, maybe it's not entirely a political formula I'm going to introduce, but it is important why Dostoevsky with his mythologies are so durable until today, why we still, you can hear Russians saying, well, live in Gogol. And it's a hypothetical culture, and I think that's the strength of Putin. One of the problems I remember, you know, I write articles, you mentioned my articles, I do write a lot of articles on Putin. When I write just simply political articles, okay, fine, you know, so it's Putin bashing, what else, or Kremlin bashing, what else is new. And one time I wrote a piece on Putin as the new government inspector, Gogol's character from the government inspector. I got so much flack, I almost got my passport revoked. So that suggests that it is a hypothetical culture. It really reacts to metaphors and literary illusions in a much more, in a much nastier way than just simple political analysis. I mean, no wonder in the Russian Empire and in the Soviet Empire, the writers and artists would be the first to go to Gulag. So it's, so in this, Putin can last for another 20 years.
Dangerous thing.
Well, it's once again a great. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Pasco and always try to read his blogs, because he brings up questions that doesn't seem to be brought up enough in a discussion on Russia. Something that we talked about at the beginning. I mean, it's all about the statehood, and Stalin was bad for the people, but was great for the statehood. And you know, I can go on and on explaining the details of it, but I think it just comes down to that whatever is a great statehood will take. And even if, you know, there was a great line where that I encountered in the early 2000s when Putin just became president and was very statehoody, sort of bringing back the Kremlin to the center of policy, foreign policy, economics, and whatnot, Russian economy and whatnot. And I was at the, you know, we're a democracy now, was a democracy now, but certainly a capitalist state, or sort of Kremlin state, capitalist state, put it differently. And there are apartments now in, people with money can buy apartments in the high rises, the great Stalin buildings. You know what I'm talking about, the 7 buildings that were built to represent Moscow's greatness, sort of the formula of Chrysler building, but 7 of them and much more pompous. And so people can buy, instead of being, you know, great artists or great physicists they were during the Stalin era when they were getting apartments in this, those who got apartments. Now you can just buy it. And in fact, if you pay more money, you can buy an apartment in places in those buildings that used to be security objects, because I think they had jamming devices set there. So they were apartments, but then there are some parts high up, which would be called a penthouse, actually would be a jamming station that would protect Voice of America or watch the radar. I don't know exactly what was. So now they were converted into apartments, and people buy them. And I was there, I think it was 2006, I don't remember, something 2006. I was at a party for the 9th of May, the Victory Day, which is a big holiday, as you know, in Russia. And a friend of mine, who is my age, younger than me probably, she looked at the salute with the fireworks, and they were kind of squimpy fireworks. It was before, I mean, now Putin wouldn't allow squimpy fireworks, but at the time it still wasn't a big story. Maybe it was 2004, so it wasn't. I think after 2005, after the anniversary of the Victory Day, then it became grand. But before that, it was squimpy. It was still squimpy. And my friend looked at the salute, at the fireworks, and said, you know, now the apartment is here and life is great, but I miss that. The parades were great then. And it was this balance between your own individual very good life and the fact that your state doesn't provide you with the affirmation of its greatness. I think it's a great dilemma of Russian culture to a certain extent. We were killed and imprisoned, but our parades were great. And so then you're forced or asked to make a choice. Do you want to be great with parades but in prison as well, or you want to be free but nobody gives a damn? And in my experience, most Russians would probably pick the imprisoned and parades than nobody gives a damn, because we want to be part of a great thing.
Do you think